let's get more on this now with Sami Hamdi. He is the editor-in-chief of the current affairs magazine International Interest. Thanks very much for coming in to speak to us. So as we saw from Hashim's report there in Yemen, we see a country that has been shattered by this war. We see people who have been through immense suffering and also a war that has caused a great deal of regional instability, yet there are no signs of it ending. Why?
I think the problem is because there is no clear-cut definition of what exactly we want in Yemen. Do we want to restore the national dialogue agreement that brought in a government that all political parties agreed upon? Do we want to end the war and end the suffering, and we're willing to allow Houthis' coup to succeed in Sanaa and allow the separatists to take Aden in the south? Do we want a mixture of both somehow, in which political parties all get together, we allow Houthi to be supreme, but we allow some of the other political parties and make up this sort of picture of a functioning government? Nobody really knows what they want. What does the US want? Does the US believe that Houthi can be a viable partner, as John Kerry suggested in the beginning of the conflict, against terrorism? Do we want just some sort of Yemen just to be off the books in the way that the UN suggested when Jabal bin Omar, the representative, according to suggestions, he told the Houthis, if you can clear up this mess quickly, we'll recognize any government that you put up against Hadi.
You raise many different questions there and many different scenarios. But I suppose, you know, if you were to begin to structure some kind of framework for talks, how do you even do that in a conflict where you have local tribal groups in one area, you have the Houthis elsewhere? Recently, we've seen an emboldened pro-secessionist group, the Southern Transitional Council, or STC, in Aden. How difficult is it to secure the buy-in of so many different parties?
I think the problem is because everybody has a different interest. And I know that sounds cliche. The problem is because if everybody was united behind this prospect of restoring some sort of democratic institution in Yemen, that by nature means ousting Houthi from Sanaa. It means the international community getting together, pushing Houthi out of Sanaa, ruining his power card, and he comes to the table and he disarms because it's a matter of survival for him. But that doesn't seem to be the interest of the international community, because the reason why I say this is because the international community seems to have other priorities, whether it's terrorism, whether it's the like. If we're talking about a building block for peace, the building block for peace should be one that is founded on a basis that there will not be any future conflicts. In other words, one that does not allow one party that has weapons to overthrow other particular parties. Because you can have an agreement today between Houthi and the separatists, and we will have a united Yemen. But what happens tomorrow if Islah decides to adopt a Houthi-style process, take up arms, conquer Jawf and Amran from the Houthis, take Saada and take Sanaa again? Do we negotiate with Islah again, a new negotiating process, and make them the main party? What if the Nasrists and the UAE tell will back the Nasrists, and Nasrists say, you know what, we have a few weapons, let us go conquer Sanaa. And we repeat this process again. Because there's a war, we want to end the war, we want to end the suffering,
yes,
let's negotiate with them.
These are all legitimate questions, but as we have seen, the current military approach towards the Houthis isn't working. We are just continuing to see a humanitarian crisis that is getting worse with each month, with each year. So, you know, fresh thinking then is needed. Where does the responsibility for that lie? Does it need to be, does there need to be a new framework under the auspices of the United Nations or some other body? Who needs to lead this process?
I think what needs to happen, first and foremost, and the reason why I say that it sounds like I am bashing the Houthis, but the problem is that the issue with the Houthis is this. They're gambling. When you look at human rights organizations and they cover the different atrocities taking place in the war, this feeds into what Houthi wants. Houthi believes that as long as he stays in Sanaa, the pressure will be on the Saudis. The Saudis will sit with the Houthis. When they sit with the Houthis, it will be on their terms. It doesn't create a viable solution to Yemen. And I know perhaps it's not the best thing to say on TV, but the problem is, unless there is a dynamic change in the war, there is no genuine viable political solution. The power balance is heavily in favor of a militia that committed a coup. Now, we have to decide, if we're talking about solution today, we have to decide which is more important. To end the war, no matter the cost, forget the democratic principles and forget whatnot, or the lives of children, the lives of the Yemeni people. It's a difficult decision, and life is never easy. When you're analysing, it's always very easy because we don't make the difficult decisions. But in my personal opinion, if you want a lasting Yemen, the war must continue until Houthi leaves. If you want a quick fix solution, put a selotape on it that will blow up later, then we negotiate with Houthi today. We tell them you can keep Sanaa. We tell the separatists you can keep Aden, make an autonomous region, let Yemen operate somewhat for 5-10 years.
Sami Hamdi, editor-in-chief of the International Interest, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, the British government